Once you have these things put together and in line, you might be thinking about how you talk about them in your college application process. Now, the best place, of course, to talk about these things are in your extracurricular section and in your essays. You might be asked, why do you want to go into a particular field? Why have you selected the major that you have? Or why do you want to apply to this school? And computer science can be a really good way to answer those kinds of questions, especially if you intend on being a software engineer. So there are certain schools that have really strong software engineering and computer science programs. And so these are going to be good places to say, I want to be at this school because I really identify with the program that you have set up in this field and in this department. And I am excited to use the resources, these specific resources that your school offers that will lead to my goal of becoming a software engineer. Talking about your major, you're going to want to talk about what actually attracts you to the field. Obviously, the salaries that I talked about before are pretty nice, and there are other incentives involved, but you want to talk about what about computer science itself as a field is interesting to you and engaging and that gets you really excited. So these could be things like really being fascinated by the inner workings of technology or of an app. You might be really fascinated by how certain tools on websites work. Or maybe you are interested in improving user experience or finding innovative ways to design and implement new software. Maybe you just like building things and solving problems that way with your hands and your brain. And these are the more fundamental reasons. They're a little less shallow and really dig into the deep needs that you have that only computer science or software engineering is able to help you achieve. In general, you're going to want to funnel your essays from abstract to specific. Though, of course, you can always open with a very particular anecdote or a quotation or something to catch the reader's eye. But in general, you should start with the high-level interests, those fundamental things we talked about, like the inner workings of a website or the ways that you want to innovate in the field. And you'll also want to make sure you touch on those personal experiences that you've had that have led you to understand that this is your passion, this is your goal. So maybe you had an experience with technology that was super fascinating and confusing, but in a good way, and you wanted to learn more and how that had come to pass and how it had worked. Maybe you've had the opposite experience where you've been trying to work with technology and it is really frustrating. It just won't work. It's glitchy. It doesn't make sense. It's confusing in a bad way or convoluted. Then maybe you want to get into the field so that you can improve it and improve that experience for other people in the future. So having anecdotes from a relevant experience is going to be really helpful in making these essays personal and making these essays compelling and having them tell a real story that backs up what you're claiming about your interests. Having these STEM-related experiences then through these classes and through those extracurriculars becomes important when you're writing your essays because it gives you those anecdotes to draw on. Have you had that experience that was super cool and mind-blowing with technology, so you got involved with it? So you started learning to code and it started to make sense. Or you had that really frustrating experience and then you started to code and you understood why it was structured that way, why those bugs were in the system, and you started to think about ways to eliminate them that preserved the intention of the software. You also want to talk about the future. So you have the present in your values, you have the past in your experiences and anecdotes, but you also want to talk about the future, your goals for your career, your major, and your involvement with computer science and software engineering. So these can be hypothetical careers you're interested in, like game design or mobile design, like I talked about before. And of course, these don't need to be set in stone, but it would be nice to be able to add to your personal narrative and helps admissions officers better understand your values and motivations. But if you really truly don't know what domain of computer science you might be interested in, you can just talk about how much you want to build things, and that no matter where you end up, because it's such a broad field, you want to be making people's lives better by improving the technology that they can use. And so you want to make sure that you're hitting the past, the present, and the future, but you're also talking about things in a general and specific sense. You should be putting these together, especially for those why major and why field or program of study questions. But again, you might also be interested in mentioning these things in your why school essays. And in order to do that, you may have to make sure that you're applying to schools and programs that have strong computer science departments or software engineering departments. Engineering